Now, before we start talking about the effects of sound and how sound works, I want to touch briefly on what I know about psychedelics. I did a couple of training programs on assisting people through their psychedelic journeys. So how do psychedelics work? Classic psychedelics are examples like LSD, psilocybin mushrooms. Ketamine is usually grouped together, but their biochemical pathways are a little bit different. Ketamine works on the glutamate pathway, while the classic psychedelics bind to the serotonin receptors. From a neuroscience perspective, the psychedelics reduce the effects of the DMN, which is a default mode network. And that is where our sense of the small self, our sense of ego, who we think we are, things that we constantly worry about or ruminate about, things in the past, this area is very active in terms of thought patterns like this. So when someone is on a psychedelic journey, the activity in this network is reduced. So what this means is that it leads to a diminished sense of self, reduced rigid thought loops, and a greater feeling of connection to nature and to the universe. We feel more expansive, and our brain connectivity increases, and we feel like, as if we're one with the world. Psychedelics have gained a lot of attention in recent years because of what they can do. Some people report having a spiritual experience. Some war veterans with PTSD symptoms were able to return to living a normal life after just a few sessions. And now we know the effects that people can have when they take psychedelics, but the mechanism of action is still inconclusive from the Western science perspective, right? If it can't be seen under the microscope or in test tubes, it's hard to convince some people's minds. Psychedelics basically take us on a soul journey, where some people can have an out-of-body experience. We can go back in time and process old trauma under a state of altered consciousness. Messages and insights can be received. However, the mainstream psychedelic community has yet to openly acknowledge that this is a powerful tool that can connect us to the spiritual world. Because in order to get, approval from the FDA so that this can be used in the mainstream medicine, they try to make it too scientific and exclude the spiritual part of what really this work means. They say it's the molecule, it's the compound, it's the plants, it's the medicine that alters our level of consciousness. But what about the message that people receive during their journey? Where do these messages come from? How do they heal their trauma just by altering their consciousness? I think if we keep ignoring the spiritual part of the psychedelics and how they work, they can become exploited and abused, just like many other things in the world, that were meant to be used for good, for pure intentions. And unfortunately, I know that now there are many people who take psychedelics on a regular basis for recreational purposes, underground, and you can even get them online now because they want to get out of their bodies. They don't want to do any inner work, and this really can be troublesome in the long term. In addition, the set and setting of a psychedelic journey is so important. What does that mean? So what is your intention? And who are you with during the journey? And what kind of intentions do they have? Are they kind-hearted people with pure intentions in your best interest? Or do they have their own agenda? All these things matter when we play with things in the spiritual realm. And they're crucial because, if handled improperly, it can backfire. So that's my take on psychedelics. Now, when we compare psychedelics and deep meditation, they do have some similar effects. Both can increase our neuroplasticity. Both can change our neural pathways, which is how our subconscious beliefs can be altered with these two modalities. With psychedelics, our brain is changed in a very rapid way, right? And sometimes after people come back from their journey, they don't know what to do with themselves. Can feel very dissociative. And that's why you never want to do this alone without a trained facilitator, especially if you have deep trauma history. In meditation, our brain is changed over time with practice. It may take years, but it's worth the effort, in my opinion. So I sincerely believe that if people want to try psychedelics to process their trauma, they should learn how to meditate first before they do the journey, and definitely continue to meditate after their journey for their integration. Have the skill of sitting and observing your inner world and be comfortable with that first. Remember how I said that my live events have guided me in ways that I can't explain except by a higher guidance, a higher power? So this is one of those examples. The reason I was led to do sound work is because during my last ketamine training for end-of-life distress, I chose not to take the ketamine that was offered to me during the program. Instead, I sat through the journey with only music and, blindfolds like everybody else. And you know what the crazy thing is? I had a journey just as if I had taken the ketamine. I was completely out of my body, and I was able to feel other people's experiences around me. And I know this can be associated with the effects of the group energy, but it was also the sound that really made the experience possible. So to make a long story short, one thing led to another. Sound has become this beautiful gift, and it has shown me so much. And the more I'm curious about this, the more is revealed to me.